On the behalf of B-HBrilliantMinds Project, Inc., we would like to thank you all for hosting and facilitating this special Father's Day event. The brothers that's putting this event on for us, Brother Logan, Brother Hodge, and Elder Perkins. So I want to say a special thank you to my dad, which is transitioned over, and happy belated Father's Day to you all. That's fathers and mothers being fathers. So with that, on the Tap In series, we are grateful to have you all have an organic conversation on fatherhood and brotherhood, the importance of holding each other in love, sharing wisdom, the good, the challenging of being a man of strength, having brotherhood, and our love language is creating a platform to uplift people of color, their brilliance, their vibrance, their resilience, boldness, and our love. And I am going to go on and get out of the way and let the brothers have their way. So I'm not quite sure. I can't see everybody on here, but however, who's all on here, I don't know, is Elder Perkins on?
No, he's not on.
Okay. Brother Hodge?
Sure. I can kick this off.
And first of all, for us, it would be awesome, brother, and I thank you.
Okay. So this is organic.
Yes. You know what? We said organic.
You did say organic.
Yes,
it's good to see everybody. And as is in the tradition of African people, we take a moment to acknowledge our ancestors from time immemorial until, the current moment. And that libation is offering, it's an affirmation, it's a opportunity for us to remember and to reflect and renew. And so I just invite you, wherever you are, as you think about this topic of fathers and being a Black man and what it means in this time, and just sort of remember who are the fathers of the race, if you will. Who are the people who we emulate? Who are the people that we hold up as a standard of behavior, as a standard of words, as a standard of action? And we would open the libation and generally say that we invite the Creator into our hearts. The Creator is always with us. The Creator is known by many names, sometimes known as Olodumare, sometimes known as Jehovah, sometimes known as Yahweh, sometimes known as Ptahhotep, sometimes known as Amen-Ra, but always in that creative, divine energy that we all sit in. And we ask our ancestors from the east, from the north, from the south and west to come and be with us. We ask our ancestors from the Nile Valley, who created writing systems and economic systems and family systems all up and down the Nile Valley, from the Valley of the Mountains of the Moon all the way to the Mediterranean, that those ancestors who were included great builders, great artists, great carvers, who left us a language of love, who left us a language of spirituality, that they come and be with us, and we say Ashe.
Ashe.
Pour this libation for ancestors who were in the other river valleys, in the Niger, in the Congo, and the Zambezi, places where they also created life and may not have built monuments like pyramids, but built monuments of how to be with each other, how to understand the Ubuntu idea, this idea that I am because we are, and we are because I am. And for those ancestors, whether they were in the Mali Empire or down in Zimbabwe, wherever they might have been, we say Ashe.
Ashe.
Pour libation for ancestors who were caught up in the Great Ma'afa, that great African Holocaust, that African tragedy of 500 years of slavery and colonialism and sharecropping and lynchings and all of the atrocities that have happened to our people. And the Mississippi Valley represents that because it's the longest river in North America, and it's where many of our people settled as farmers and others, even after the period of slavery ended in 1865, that first round of slavery. And so for them, we say Ashe as well.
Ashe.
And because we've been trained well, and because we understand our connection to all of humanity, we also acknowledge ancestors who may have been Native American, who were Ohlone, or Choctaw, or Quapaw, or Cherokee, or Seminole, or Lakota, or Blackfeet Indian. Because when we ran from the plantations, often we ran into our Native brothers and sisters. So for them, we fought the Europeans down in Florida and Alabama, the Seminole Wars, and we beat Andrew Jackson's folks. You know, a lot of times they don't want to tell the start part about how we beat them. We kept them off us, the way we beat them in Haiti, and the way we've been able to survive despite white supremacy. For those ancestors, we also say Ashe.
Ashe.
We also pour libation for our ancestors in Mexico and in South America and Brazil and other places, because we know from our studies that 40% of all Africans who came to the New World ended up in Brazil, 40% ended up in the Caribbean, and 4% ended up here in North America. So that means we got cousins everywhere. We got cousins all up and down the North and the global South. For ancestors who were in Mississippi, when you think about the geography, because a lot of times when we think about the work of one of our greatest ancestors, Harriet Tubman, and how she took people out of the plantations into the north, but often the Underground Railroad actually ran south as well. The Underground Railroad ran into Mexico. So if you think about it, you know, I grew up in Arkansas. And so if I was on a plantation in Arkansas and I look at a map or somebody explains to me where the distances are, I think I got a better shot at making it to Mexico than Canada.
Yeah.
So there were ancestors who ended up in Mexico. And ancestors like Yanga and others who created African communities, especially on the eastern seaboard of Mexico. And so for those ancestors, we also say Ashe.
Ashe.
Acknowledge our Latino brothers and sisters. We acknowledge the Asian Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, people like Yuri Kochiyama, who was an ally of Malcolm X, people who worked here in California to make life better. And so for those ancestors, we also acknowledge them and say Ashe.
Ashe.
And so for all human beings who want to, you know, as the young people might say, want to get down with us, who want to fight for freedom, justice, and equality, you know, you know, people mess with me sometimes. I say I pour libation to European ancestors. The only one I can think of is John Brown. John Brown was willing to really get down with us. And I know there have been some other allies, I know there have been some other folks, but in the spirit of John Brown, somebody who was an abolitionist who picked up the Bible and the gun to help us get our freedom. For those ancestors, we say Ashe as well.
Ashe.
And we close it as we have been thinking about and reflecting on and remembering for our renewal, as we reflect on the ancestors, and our renewal is in this time. This is a historic moment for African people. It's a historic moment for the country. We know that the George Floyd episode, the George Floyd murder, was just like Rodney King. Stuff has been going on for decades, but we just didn't know about it. We didn't have a camera all the time. We knew about it, we knew about it. The world may not have known about it. And so for Breonna Taylor, and I've been thinking a lot about their sacrifice. And one person killed in broad daylight, another person killed and that we need to think about like that moment and what that sacrifice mean? What does that blood mean for us as we try to renew ourselves? And so for Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and Rayshard Brooks and Eric Salgado, who was killed by CHP here in Oakland 2 weekends ago, for all these recent ancestors, that we might renew ourselves with the energy of liberation, with the energy of real emancipation, because, you know, if Brother Malcolm were looking at this, he would say, Emancipation Proclamation, you've been bamboozled, you've been hoodwinked, you've been took. Because Abraham Lincoln freed the so-called slaves, enslaved ancestors in the South that were in the war era, not the ones in the North, not the ones in New York, not the ones up and down the Eastern Seaboard and Rhode Island and wherever else we were. And then when General Granger walks into Galveston, Texas on June 19th of 1865, he didn't say, Negroes, y'all free. Go back and read the proclamation. Read what he said. What he said was, we are changing your relationship to us. We are changing from masters and slaves, interestingly, to employers and hired labor. This is what he said. He also said, you need to stay in your homes. In other words, you're free, but you're going to still work for us. You're going to still live in the same shotgun shacks that you was living in. And that was it. So all of this celebratory aspect of we free is a little bit premature. Freedom ain't come yet. So
that's right.
So in this libation, I want to hopefully engage us and encourage us as we think about fatherhood, as we think about what it means to be a good man in our community, what it means to be a good role model for our children, what it means to provide for them, to correct them when they're wrong, to congratulate them when they're right, to renew ourselves as fathers and as mothers and as folks in this community. We invite all of our ancestors' energy. We invite all of their brilliance and wisdom and creativity to bring it to this moment. And we close it and we say Ashe 3 times, Ashe.
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 And Ashe.
Ashe.
Now I'm going to pass it maybe to Brother Gaylon. If you want to start us off with just any expressions of what is being a father meant to you. And we can just, roll with this conversation how we want. Yesterday was Father's Day. I think every day is Father's Day and every day is Mother's Day. Because fathers don't get no day off. Mamas don't get no day off. Because the baby stuff all the time. So, but for Gaylon, I'm just curious, like when you think about this idea of being a father from a Black perspective, from an African perspective, what comes up for you?
Well, the first word, thank you, Greg. First word that comes up for me is process. It's process, and that I believe the 3 most powerful states of being for a male is male, man, and father, and that through those dynamics are those different iterations of being a human being and carrying that title means something. And, I'll never forget the beginning of Roots. And I'm sure everybody has seen Roots at some time or another. But there's a very poignant moment where Kunta is in the tent with Cicely Tyson, LeVar Burton, Cicely Tyson, and he's getting ready to go to manhood training. And he don't want to go. Right. And she don't want him to go either. But had it not been for the men in that village that had set a system in place so that they can create these blocks and this system for moving into manhood, it would most likely look like it looks today in this country, because he did go, and the man came and got him and made sure that. And when he got back, his mama tried to come up and hug on him, and he was like, "Oh no, ma, I'm a man now." Right. So he was different. He had transformed. He went through this process of, evolving after having that experience of spending time and sharing space with men. And so that's sorely lacking. And I don't want to get into all that because I know that's a long conversation, but that's sorely lacking today. And where our boys are in situations with the single mama, and she don't want him to go, and he don't want to go, and guess what happens? He don't go. Right. And so he never gets that experience of going out into the world and slaying that lion, and having that experience of moving himself from one place to another. So I'm gonna cut my comments short, and there's some powerful people on this call, boy. So I want to hear as much as I talk.
Well, sisters just listening. I mean, you can chime in when you want, but we just listen in this organic conversation.
Somebody, Greg? Is this how this works? Do I pick somebody? Tag team?
Yeah, pick somebody.
All right.
I like it. I love it.
Well, it's my I can pick a few of y'all. I see y'all on here. It's my profound pleasure and honor to signal out that brother Michael Shaw. Please, Michael Shaw. You know I wasn't gonna forget you, bro.
No, you did for Father's Day, and I appreciate you. And Greg and Gaylon, I think the word I think of is honor. It is an honor to be a father.
Yes.
It's been a privilege to be a father who was able to raise his children and to see them all go off to school, and especially my boy, who I got to be a part of his manhood training, and to see him now be a man. It's the greatest joy I've ever had, is being a father. And I don't know what it's like to be a child with the father, because I was a child without a father. And my son tells me I'm a good father. So that means that there's been some incredible, extraordinary men in my life who helped train me. And I've been blessed to have people like Baba Perkins help raise me as a man. But it is honor and privilege and responsibility. Not only is it my greatest honor, it is my biggest responsibility. And because I model manhood for my son, but I model for my daughter what a man should be.
All right.
And so I've had the opportunity to do both. And I don't know, I smile when I think of being a dad and all the responsibilities that come with it. It's just my greatest joy.
So pick somebody, Mike.
Oh my God, James Wheaton is calling at me. My brother Wheaton, tell us what you think about this word fatherhood.
Well, I'll tell you, my brothers and sisters, I kind of think like, well, let me start like this here. I think of birth. I think of air that you breathe. I think of the water that we drink. I think of food for nutrition. I think of shelter. And I think of negotiation with other people. As a beginning for all of us, but as a man, we had to go out and do this stuff, basically, in the beginning. Now everybody does it.
Yeah.
I am a father, a grandfather, and a great-grandfather. Sometimes I think I'm not the best father, but my girls tell me I'm a good father, but I don't know. I let some of my family mess with my girls. I didn't know it, but they did. And they told me later on in life, but this is my failure, you know. But I got two great grandsons, and they're 11 years old now. The joy of seeing them. But I used to think being a man, just being a man, you gotta do what you gotta do, because you're gonna be a man or you're gonna be a woman. Well, in most cases. They try to change a little bit of that now, but you know, that's on them. But I just figured, I kind of raised myself, like my father left my mother when I was about 1 year old. He died when I was 6. So I never grew up without a father. So I kind of imitated myself after I see some strong characters. What too many men I've seen that I imitated myself after? Not all of them, just some good qualities that I took on for myself. And this is kind of the way I walked, you know, just being who I am. And I've been a freedom fighter all my life. Some kind of I was rebellious, kind of ignorant. I didn't know. I hadn't read. Nobody around taught me. But I found out for myself and grew up. And I'm just being a man, so I know how to be. You know, and fight for freedom and try to be a good brother and anybody. I got nephews. I stay in contact with them because I'm one of the elders, and they look at me as a father figure. So I'm always with them, talking to them, and, you know, trying to be in their lives and let them be in mine, because it's all about relationships. That's kind of where I'm at, and I'm going to pass it to Brother Clark, he looks pretty good.
Thank you, my brother. There's three words that always come to my mind when I think of fatherhood. The first one is reward. It has been everything. I posted on Facebook. It has been the most honoring thing that I've ever been able to do in my life. To think the life I live, so it has been so rewarding. Yesterday was probably my best Father's Day ever, and my kids just had me in tears, man. I'm actually a single. I've been a single father with two of my kids. My son for 12 years, and one of my daughters, I think, for 4 or 5. And so the other word that comes along other than rewarding is sacrifice. It is the biggest sacrifice that you'll ever make. Yeah. Being a father is a sacrifice. You give up yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you give up a lot of yourself, and you give up a lot of your ways. And then my third word is always exchange. This is one I don't hear a lot. I've learned and I teach that fatherhood is exchange. My kids have taught me and grown me just as much as I've grown them. And so in fatherhood, I do a lot of classes and a lot of teaching, and I'm like, expect it to be exchange. And I ask my kids all the time, be graceful with me just as I am with you, because I'm gonna mess this thing up sometime. I didn't have a father. I grew up with a single mother. My mother was in the hospital most of my adolescent years, so I got in a lot of trouble and made a lot of decisions, but here I am. I made a vow that I would be the father I never had, living into my statement of I'm just trying to be what I didn't see. And that is a vow that I made. And so now I love being a father. And I'm gonna pass this to my brother, Greg. Mr. Block.
I'll say a little bit more. Your brother Gary.
Miss Gary.
Sure.
Yes, and Gary.
Brother Wayne, how are you, man?
How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Ashe, likewise, my brother. First, I'd like to start off by saying that I acknowledge and appreciate the libation, Brother Greg. Wow. So, put it in perspective from my viewing, we go back millenniums and we see the legacies of our forefathers, and we understand how we transitioned into manhood from childhood, and the roles that not only the parental roles that were played, but the village and undergirded us, right? And I think when we find ourselves in this westernized situation, we kind of neglect undergirding and supporting, each other in terms of raising our children, our men, our boy childs to be men. Being a parent is an awesome responsibility, as eloquently stated by each and every one of us. I think, though, that what we need to do is to get back to where we come from.
Yes.
Because it gives us a sense of assurance. It gives us a sense of belonging and to stay connected with our higher power. In my case, I call it God, right? And that in and of itself gives us the ability to reassure and connect and empower ourselves, especially when we're speaking, of our offspring. It is so dynamic, because as I pour into my children, they in turn pour into their children, and we leave a legacy, we leave a history. And it's come so far to get us to where we are right now that it behooves each and every one of us never to drop the ball, to continue to carry the torch, and to always persevere, knowing that we are of a greatness. We are of a wealth of, of humanity that I think sometimes we have a tendency to forget being engaged in this westernized society.
Yes.
Remember the millenniums, remember, the depth of our virtue of being, and understand our purpose and our direction, and pour that into our children. Fatherhood. Oh my God. There's nothing greater than fatherhood, with the exception of motherhood, right? With that, I'm complete. I look out into the people and I see Brother Ted Marsh. And if you would be so kind, brother, to take yourself off of mute and express yourself.
Brother Gary, I'm so pleased to be here with you. You can't see me because I'm still struggling with this camera. I apologize.
It's all right, we hear you.
Some days it works and some days it takes a vacation, so I apologize. I want to thank Gaylon for the invitation to be here. I want to reach out to my brother Michael Shaw, who back in 2005, he and I were part of a circle. We went through the Black Landmark together. And I tested him because I did not know him very well. I tested the brother and I asked him a key question in terms of, do Black people behave in a civilized manner? Do you remember that question?
Yes, sir.
And so we had, I think, 9 men in a group there, and we explored that as a question. And I'm still exploring it today. So I want to thank you, Brother Michael, for initiating that conversation and beginning to change the narrative. I also want to give accolades to the namesake for the high school that I graduated from in Kansas City, Kansas. It was named after Charles Sumner. And Charles Sumner was a major player in terms of the whole path to our freedom, and also played a big role after the end of the Civil War in terms of fighting to fighting to support the Freedmen's Bureau. So the 2 high schools that I'm most powerful and related to in Kansas City and also St. Louis were Sumner High Schools. 2 schools by the same name in 2 different states, but outstanding pedigrees, both of them. So I want to touch a little bit on this topic of manhood. I personally am not a father by blood, but I certainly have mentored a lot of young men and young women. And I'm very proud of some of the progress that they've made. But I just wrote a letter, and I sent a copy to you, Gaylon, today. I just wrote a letter to Brother Kevin Powell out there on the East Coast. And as a response to his writing and editing an anthology of a book called The Black Man's Handbook. And based on the work that we've done out here on the West Coast, I gave him some feedback because I thought, again, these middle-aged Black men on the East Coast don't have the experience of Baba Arnold and myself and others who have been on this path a little bit longer than they have. So I acknowledge the strength and the wisdom of elders. And there are 3 questions that I used to ask when I was serving as a consultant. That is, what's working, what's not working, and what's missing. And the thing that keeps coming up in terms of the answer to that 3rd question, what's missing, is elderhood.
Yeah.
Very proud to acknowledge Brother Arnold, who created this conversation and narrative called the Brotherhood of Elders. Because it is extremely important that in order for us to heal our community, that we actually establish a strong elderhood. I also wanted to piggyback on what was said earlier in terms of how important fatherhood is. Fatherhood is one of the 20 key rites of passages that we've identified in our work. And we don't identify father we don't identify manhood or even fatherhood as a station. We identify it as a journey. And so we go through today, we go through a whole series of rites of passages in terms of strengthening our character and becoming the models both as husbands, as fathers, and as grandfathers. And without those key rites of passages, what we found and discovered through our research is that somehow our growth is arrested. And in the process of it being arrested and paused, it actually doesn't proceed to the next level. So one of the outcomes that we came in that conversation some 15 years ago was a civilized people actually takes the best from previous generations, and we add our 10 cents or 10% to it, and we pass it on to the next generation. So the conclusion that we reached 15 years ago was that currently our Black folks are not behaving in a civilized manner, that we have come to rely too much on the standard and the reference of the white male supremacy system. And what we're experiencing today, what I call the perfect storm, what we're experiencing today is that, as Brother Malcolm said, is the chickens have come home to roost. And we're starting to see the white male supremacist system crack and begin to tumble. And in the process of doing that, we have to re-examine who we are and where we are, that in the greatness that we are, and that we're the origins of civilization, we're the origins of mankind, and our responsibility is not to sit back and wait for a toxic system to actually cure itself. It won't. And so part of this manhood conversation and part of the womanhood conversation is we're now called upon to reestablish a firm foundation based on nature and based on our relationship with the Creator, and get out of this, as one brother told me, get off of this state of confusion and the street of delusion, and to move to a different state of consciousness. And with that, I'm complete. So who are we missing? Barbara, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Wow. Well, I just want to say to you all, I'm honored and grateful. I made a pledge to myself when I was a younger woman. My birthday was yesterday. I just turned 56. However, to me, Black men are the, God, y'all about to make me cry, kings in my eyes. And I've always said, good, bad, or ugly, I'm going to make sure that you in my eyes are represented as a king. And I am honored to be with you all, and knowing that we have been chosen for such a time as these. As someone said earlier, that civilization started with us. I think it was Brother Hodge. However, we are the ones that can lead us to where we need to be and lead this country and others. So doing this Zoom, having this nonprofit, doing the Juneteenth and things like this, this is my lane that I was chosen to be in, and these different events that I do, just as well as everybody else on here. We learn together, we move together, and to show our next generation that if we don't keep legacy alive, then we would never, we lose. So this to me is historic. This to me is something that we have to continue to doing every day of our lives. And to be honored to hear you brothers talk, I can now think about the things that my dad had to go through. He started his business and with a 6th grade education. He told me at one time and point when he was growing up, he had to go with his grandma. She's the one who raised him, and he would make 25 cents a week. And in my eyes, I'm like, whoa. He said at 6, he was driving a tractor trailer. And for working and I just say to you all, the strength that you have, it's beyond, and the Lord gave that to you guys. Jehovah gave that to you. And it is my responsibility as a Black woman to hold you up. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that to the day I die. So I'm going to leave it right there. And I'll pass it over to Mama Fanya. Uh-oh. Unmute yourself.
I had to step out. What's the question?
We're tapping in and tag teaming and just sharing with the brothers from what we have already heard thus far. And how can we as women empower, for me on the take is how do we empower them and then support them in this day and time?
Okay. It's an interesting question. As you know, as I was listening to the brothers talk, I was thinking about my father, who's now an ancestor, and how in a way forward thinking he was. He was born in 1918. He lived until he was 84 years old, born and raised in Arkansas, Lavaca, Arkansas, and was raised primarily by his mother. His father left, I don't remember what age, but his father left. And just hearing about the things in his childhood and his young manhood that, you know, that he went through, and, you know, obstacles that he overcame. One thing about my dad, when he and my mom were together, they, for the most part, didn't have rigid male-female roles. Both my parents cooked, so whoever got home first, you know, started the meal. So I didn't grow up with those rigid male-female, you know, women's work and men's work.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, one thing that I got from him. Another thing was a love of our people. You know, I consider him a race man, and you know, with you know, some of the activities that he did and he was engaged in, and you know, just information that he passed on to us about our people. How I support fathers and men, you know, with positive affirmations, being a good mother myself to my children, you know, honoring our men, you know, as it's been said before, whether they're biological fathers or not. You know, we're all father, mother role models, you know, whether we have biological children or not. And, you know, just honoring our men, praising, you know, giving praise. And if need be, you know, pull a coattail, pull an ear.
Right.
You know, teach and share with each other about how best we feel, you know, we need to be in relationship to African children.
Right.
Whether they're our biological children or not. And, you know, I have a friend I've known since like the early 70s, and he was talking about his childhood and how he didn't grow up without a father. Yet, you know, he talked about the Mr. Jones down the block, and Mr. Williams down the block, and the Mr. Brown. And I said, no, you may not have had a father in the home, but you had fathers, you know, in your community. You had fathers in your life. So, you know, I just give praise to the fathers and the men who step up. And as others have said before, it's a sacrifice for sure. You know, it's a sacrifice. And to be engaged willingly, be engaged lovingly, be engaged, you know, with discipline and structure, and pride in our people. You know, that's what I grew up with. So, you know, ashe to you all. Ashe to you all.
Yeah.
Am I to pass it?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, who hasn't spoken?
Samantha.
Oh, who? You?
Samantha.
Samantha. That's our young generation.
I thought she was gonna get away by being the tech person. You're in the circle, so you got to say something.
Right.
I will say something. Yeah, it's just a joy to be able to sit back and listen, really. I'm actually reading a book right now, which I want to share. It's called Understanding the Purpose and Power of Men by Dr. Miles Monroe. And I think that because I have brothers, because, you know, my father was in my life, both my parents are still together. I just think about like looking at the world and the amount of oppression that men, Black men particularly, have to carry, but also feeling very much like, even as a woman, that oftentimes that I have to step into the masculine space to be so strong. So I think I think more so questions than answers. So I think if to hear more about how can I be of support to Black men, to men of color, especially in these times, but also not having to feel like I have to step into masculine skin, that I could still feel like I'm going to be protected in the process. That doesn't seem like something that's possible. I think that like I have to look out for myself and they have to look out for themselves too. And like it's every man for himself, and it's just the nature of what is. I don't want to believe that, but the more I look outward, that's what it really feels like. So I'm grateful, and I think every moment I do get a chance, I want to be able to be of support in that way. But as I look at the world, it just seems really difficult to do that right now. So if anybody has any ideas about how to do that in a way that is not overstepping a man's space and identity, but also is loving and is also respectful in a purposeful manner.
Yeah, Gaylon, you had something you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to briefly respond to that. I'm really privileged and honored to have a coaching practice, and I coach individuals, groups, and families, and I really enjoy coaching couples, especially young Black couples. And there's a sort of, if you can envision three ciphers next to each other, and on both ends represents you and me. And the middle cipher represents us. And so the whole notion that each of us we consist of three areas: good, bad, and ugly. I know a lot of people don't like using those terms, bad, but good, bad, and ugly just represents good as the essence. That's our humanity. The bad is just faulty information. There's no bad people. There's no bad children. They just have faulty information that they're running off of. That's all. And the ugly represents a place where you get to where you recognize that you're running off of faulty information, but you choose to settle and roll with it and embrace it as though it's you. So to respond to your question, quite often what I run into when working with couples is the first thing to be with somebody is you got to have the ability to turn you off. So in other words, it's sort of like, you know, that you ever heard that notion to people, there's people who listen to learn and there's people who listen to respond. And in many cases, you know, quite often if we're not settled and grounded within ourselves, we're always listening to respond with what we know and what we believe, as opposed to understanding where this other person is coming from. And quite often I find that to be the case in couples where a woman has had to deal with so much that she doesn't trust. And a lot of women don't trust a man and his ability. I had a sister once that told me, well, you know, he offers to pay the bills, but then he doesn't do it. So I just pay all the bills. And, you know, what I helped her to do is understand, you got to let him.
Right.
You can't just think that he can't do it. You got to let him. So put the money to the side. And if he don't pay it, then you got it. But you got to create a space to help him to grow into becoming a man and becoming a father and a husband and a responsible person. And quite often I see that when working with mothers that have sons, is that they get to a place where they don't believe that he can, and so they don't require him to. And then he doesn't think he has to because she always does it.
Do it.
And he starts expecting her and other women to do it because nobody's ever made him responsible and held him to that. I've yet to meet a man and a father that did not want to be a man and did not want to be a father. They just had that faulty information and they had not reconciled that whole piece. But I've never met a man or a father who did not want to be a father. So I think that's a terrible myth. And, you know, brothers just don't know how. And so just being patient, I don't want to keep dragging on, but just to be patient. But most importantly, get out of you, put your ego to the side and listen to understand where this man is coming from is very, very key. And also he needs to do the same thing.
Well, I would add to it too. And Samantha, thank you for sharing that. And Gaylon, thank you for sharing as well. This idea of false information. And I think that sometimes we look to all the wrong places for role models and guidance and what we think is accurate information about being an African man or a woman. And I think some of our definitions of manhood and fatherhood are influenced by white supremacy. Some of them are influenced by this idea that we somehow need to control everything, and we need to somehow tell the women in our lives, partners in our lives, what to do. If you go back and look at the African perspective about this, and you look at it from a place of our artistic expression, like how we thought about male and female, masculine and feminine, and what Obadiah Shaka talks about in one of his books is that complementary duality, that we're different, but we have to complement each other. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of folks think that being a man means telling other people what to do, conquering other people's lives. That's a very European idea. And I think that we've been immersed in this Western culture so long, we may not even recognize what is up. We might not even see what we really are. So I think some of the importance is that you go back and look and study and you sort of think about what it meant to be a partner, whether you were masculine or feminine, and acknowledging that men have some feminine and women have some masculine, and that we have to, whoever you're working with, Samantha, I think it really is that partnership, and that notion of sort of being responsible. I mean, you look at the Dogon tradition and they talk about the Nomo twins, and there's two figures, they're sitting side by side, they have arms around each other's back respectively, and it's male and female, masculine and feminine in unity. And I think we've had some of those notions where, you know, a lot of times as Black men, we think we're supposed to lead the family. I have to say, my own model for this is my own family, my mother, my father. And there's a couple of lessons that I picked up at a certain point in my life, because I had two fathers. When I came to California, I met a lot of folks that didn't have any men in their life. They were just, and I didn't understand it, because I turned 60 a couple of weeks ago. My experience of growing up in Arkansas, thank you, you too, small Black town, was that I had all kind of men in my community that were pretty much, it's gonna sound interesting or sort of odd to say, everybody I grew up around had their dad. Everybody.
That's not odd.
Everybody, right? Everybody. So it was never this thing of like, well, so-and-so, you know, and there were some single moms around, but there was also some uncles, as Mama Fani said, there's some uncles around. There was some big daddies around. And my purpose story is such that I had the odd sort of benefit of having two fathers, one a biological father and one a familial father. I think part of what we have to do as Black people in this time is we have to make family.
Mm-hmm.
I have, like, a lot of young people don't have family that they,
yeah,
that's my
true.
real. And then people ask questions, who's your real dad? Well, my real dad was my familial dad. My mother was married to a man who she divorced, and right as they were divorcing, I got conceived. His name was John. The dad that raised me for 26 years of my life, I did not know that my father who raised me, David Hodge, whose name I bear, was not my real dad. So when I found out, people said, well, how you feel about it? Because, you know, your real dad. I said, wait, my real dad is the person who fed me, clothed me, housed me, taught me right from wrong, sent me to college, taught me how to play piano a little bit because he was a musician. All the things that I hear myself saying to my children, I got from David Hodge, not from John Terry. And they were very different people. John was fun-loving but irresponsible. Didn't take care of no kids. Was married with 4 or 5 women came to his funeral, all in the category of girlfriend or wife. He would give you his shirt off his back when he was around, but mostly he wasn't around, right? He was the one who had a lot of women in his life, and so a lot of men go, "Oh, that's the real man," because he got all these girlfriends. My dad, David, and he drank. He was an alcoholic who can only hold one can of beer. I ain't never heard of alcoholic who can only drink 1 can of beer and be drunk. I'm like, that's you wasting your alcoholism. I'm just simply joking. But somebody might be in recovery on this call. I don't want to make light of that. My David Hodge didn't drink, didn't smoke. Well, he drank every now and then. He could buy a 6-pack of beer in the beer stand in the refrigerator for a year. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't cuss. I never heard my father use one word of profanity ever in the whole time in 35 years of being around my father. I never heard that. Never heard him raise his voice at my mother. Never heard them fighting or arguing. Every now and then, my dad, he would get quiet on you. My mother said something my dad didn't like, and I give you one example, and then I'll pass it. Some of y'all may remember back in the day when Good Times was on. Good Times was like that period where they would tell you before the show came on, there's some topics that may be adult topics that may not be okay for kids. So this little thing comes on TV, and we like, what we about to watch? Because I'm like 12, 13 years old. And my father, as soon as the show started coming on, because basically the theme was JJ got syphilis or gonorrhea. Oh, wow. He got something. And this was the topic, right? So my father was like pretty much wanting to protect us from everything. So he was like, oh, they can't watch this. And my mother said, and they both public school teachers, my mother said, well, no, the kids need to know this and they need to see. And my dad got real quiet. He said, I said, we're not going to watch it. I ain't never seen my mother just go, okay. That was that. It wasn't
that sounds like my mother and father.
Yep, it wasn't no yelling. It was just like, and he reserved that for certain moments. He didn't do that all the time. Every now and then. My mother paid all the bills. My dad would bring his check home and sign his check over to my mother, and he would spend some little money out of the checking account. But I think of him when I found out that John Terry was my biological father. When I was 26 years old, I had to go home and talk to my mom. Because everybody in the family is like, you may want to talk to your mama, because I look just like John. Spitting image. I went to talk to my mother, and she said, well, yeah. And then she told me the story, what happened. And then I went to talk to my dad. And my dad, before I started talking, he said, I know what you want to talk to me, but I want you to know something. I love you. You're my I clothed you, housed you, fed you, taught you the difference between right and wrong. You have my name, and there's nothing you can say that's going to change how I feel about you as my son. That was the growing up moment for me. That was the moment when I was like, oh, this is a man.
Yes.
Like this is what fathers do, right? And then you fast forward, and this is how life works. The Creator is wonderful in this way. You get a lesson you then gonna apply later. Yeah. So when I met Jamoke, some of y'all know Jamoke, but I met Jamoke. She had a 3-year-old daughter named Imani. And Imani's father Didn't spend no time with her. Still really doesn't. She's 26. They just really starting to have a relationship. And Imani became my daughter. And I basically said, no. Because people would ask Imani, well, who's your real dad? She said, Bobby Greg. And then, why your last name not Hodge? And said, oh, that's my other dad. So I got the honor of applying the lesson that I was shown by my dad to a child in my life. All to say, we have to make family.
Yes.
Any kid in your orbit is your kid, as far as I'm concerned. If you love them, if you treat them well, if you teach them. So I think part of our challenge as Black folks in Oakland right now, how many kids can we bring into our space and be that parent that they may not have had? How do we make family? Because that's what we were doing when we left the plantations. We couldn't, a lot of times, we couldn't find our real family. So we had to make family.
Sure. And Brother Greg, it's so profound. I think, though, also we need to speak on the emasculation of our Black men and how white society has implemented that mindset to degrade and demean Black men and almost have us mentally enslaved, not almost, literally have us mentally enslaved into the concept of our inability to be forward thinkers, to be fathers, husbands, and the image has been so ingrained that we have a tendency to not look outside of that mindset to where we go back millenniums, as we were talking about our legacies of historical great civilizations, kings, queens, and we only tend to think, back to the plantation, and we have a plantation mentality that limits us from becoming and being our best selves when we know who we are. And I think what we need to do is to, again, bring back, as Brother Gaylon was saying, in the example of roots, we need to encourage our boys and bring them through the rites of passage. We need to stand up and also recognize, our women and allow them to be, uplifted and undergirded in a village mentality. And we tend to become so isolated in my home, your home, our school, your school, and we have bought into the emasculation process, and we need to also, I think, put that to the side and get back to our essence, our legacy, our heritage, and understand who we really are, and pour that into our next generations of young kings and queens, and provide a way of, a mentality. And then we also need to deal with economics, because it's a global concept, but in that respect, to have our own gives an essence of pride, of ownership, of dignity, and to uplift ourselves in that regard is, I think, what you see others have. They have their language, they have their land, they have their monies, Hey, and so we need to get that back in amongst ourselves to develop our own individual pride. Again, Brother Gaylon said, it's our essence. We create civilization. So we should not have to, feed off of the scraps when we've developed and constructed, so we are of a divine people. And I think to erase the emasculation of our men and to recreate and reinvigorate our processes of bringing up our men will lead us into tomorrow with a better viewpoint and eyesight of, of how to, again, pass that legacy along We are storytellers. We are, come on, we've created it all. Astronomy, you can go, anyway, I'm complete. However, let us not, continue to bathe ourselves in the emasculation of what white supremacy and white society deems us to be, only because they are intimidated by our legacy. Let's pass that on.
Can we get Brother Steve in? Ted, we got one new person joining us. Can we hear from Brother Seasway before other folks speak? Because he hasn't had a chance to say anything.
Okay.
I think that's Seasway, that LGQ7+.
You gotta unmute yourself.
What's up?
Greetings to all my elders, my community. I've actually been on, we're headed coming back from the beach, and I saw the flyer probably at about 5:45.
Oh.
I had to tap in at about 6 o'clock. So I've been on just kind of listening. It's actually, I feel blessed to be in a position to listen, because I feel like, I do a lot of work that has to deal with space holding and facilitation. So today I was just really in the listening piece, but I would say what came up for me is legacy, similar to what Baba Greg was speaking to. I remember my father, raising my brothers who were from a previous marriage, but we all grew up together. I didn't really know. I think they were the ones that informed me when I, started becoming like a teenager or whatnot. But we was never raised like step brothers, step anything. And, when I got married, my wife, there was a child, Brother Sinai, from a, previous marriage. And that philosophy just continued. There was no separation. Like you say, we created family and we just continued the legacy. And, but that wasn't anything my father told me. It wasn't anything like he sat down and said, hey, brother, this is what you need to know. But just through the example, it was just common knowledge, I guess, so to speak. It was innate for me to just take that that position in that role. And like you say, just being an educator for so long, a mentor to so many youth, just, raising these babies is real. And you know what I mean? I'm actually looking at a lot of my young people, and I'm thankful. Like I told them, I feel like a lot, don't take this the wrong way, but what I told them is I feel like a lot of my work is done now, because I'm looking at my young people, my brothers in particular, they're marrying Black women and having children and are committing to marriage, committing to raising strong families. And I feel like that was one example that I was able to give the young people. And that came from my father, right? So when we're thinking about legacy, similar to what Baba Greg was talking about, that resonated with me. And, I'm just thankful to be on the line, y'all. I'm not going to take up too much space, and just really appreciate the wisdom.
Good to see you, brother. Brother Ted, you got something you want to add?
Let me unmute. Yeah, I want to bounce back to what the young sister was saying. What's your name again?
Samantha, I think.
Samantha?
Was that Samantha?
Samantha? Yeah, you touched upon something that touched a nerve here, and that is what I see is our Black women are actually stepping up and filling the void that is being vacated by our Black men, and it concerns me deeply. And I recognize the greatness of our Black women in that they can do many things. But one of the things that I have identified that they can't do is they cannot teach a man how to be a man.
That bears true, because I have a 30-year-old son. Yes, that's true.
So I really want to piggyback on what Brother Greg was saying in terms of we need both father and mother, whether or not it's blood related or not blood related, in order to create a healthy community. We need both present in each one of our young males and young females' lives, that relationship between a father and his daughter, and the relationship between mother and her son, those are special relationships, and we have not given that its real due. I also wanted to piggyback on what I heard in terms of our belief system. Again, unless we create a standard that supersedes the white male patriarchy that we landed in, by default, we automatically begin to emulate that faulty standard. So our belief system is based on a false standard. Again, as I said earlier, is that we live in a state of confusion on a street called delusion. Some of us live in a house called fantasy. We allow that the television and media
tell lie vision, to tell a lie.
To somehow create this image of what a man is. So oftentimes our young men actually try to out machismo the false manhood that's created on the television set.
That's good.
So we have a responsibility. There's a term that I grew up with in my neighborhood, and I'm sure some of you grew up with the same term, called half-stepping.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And it was like, what we saw in the neighborhood, there were certain individuals who would half-step. Couldn't take a full step because they were not courageous enough to really commit themselves. So they would take a half step and leaving them an out. And it started to filter into the way we actually would show up in a moment. So I recognize that as we grow our men, we have to, one, pay attention to the half-stepping process that they have adopted and call them out in terms of saying, hey, is that a full step? Are you really committed? Like really kind of putting your toe in the water to see if it's warm or cold. And so we use this language called, you know, if it works out okay, I'll try to get there. What the hell does that mean? That's not how men speak. I also encountered this term called because. There's always a reason. There's always a reason in this half-stepping narrative to not fully commit to something.
Yeah.
So we use these words like, I'll try to get there if I can. And one of the reasons I wasn't able to get there was because my car wouldn't start. And you know, so we pay attention to the language because the language is the programming to the brain.
All right.
So I wanted to say one other thing. The fact that endemic in our culture is what I call a deficiency of trust is because we have been trained and conditioned
and not trust each other
through colonialism, not to trust one another. We've been trained and conditioned not even to trust our spouses. We've been trained and conditioned that I can't trust the brother because he might walk off with my money or my woman. And so we operate from a consciousness, from trauma, as Joy DeGruy would say, we suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome. So as we begin to move towards this healthy community that we all aspire to have, but we recognize it ain't working now, as we move to healing our community, we must begin to do certain things differently. So with that, Ashe, and I'm complete.
All right. Is Brother Jackson, Tony Jackson, on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey there.
He's,
can you
unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. We
How you doing, Brother Jackson?
Fatherhood and how you doing? Happy Father's Day, belatedly.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to all the brothers on here. I came in. It sounded like at the top of Brother Greg doing what he does so brilliantly, and the comments from Gary, Brother Gary. So thank you for that. I really wanted to be a fly on the wall in this conversation and just support the conversation. It's such an important one to have. And I'll just state in terms of fatherhood, I've always appreciated the village. I became a father at 18. I was a teenage dad, and just trying to figure out how to finish my first year of college. I was going into my second year, and had to make a decision to be or not to be a father. And my decision was to be one, and all praises due to Allah. I never faltered from that. Certainly made my share of mistakes. Even after 7.5 years of marriage, I left from Chicago with my children in tow. That made 3 of them, and became a single father for 15.5 years. So I don't tend to take a whole lot of excuses from people, certainly not from students. I managed to achieve the bachelor's degree, master's, and my doctorate with my 3 kids in tow. I'm forever grateful for my mother allowing us respite when we needed it, but I never let it be too long, because that's my mother's house. And it's brothers like Baba Greg and Anika, Anika, Greg, and so many brothers in Adewole that I consider all my village. Baba Arnold Perkins, who was a mentor to me, and I met him when I came up here to go to grad school, and ended up being a mentor to my son. My thing is, you gotta be, it's funny. I've gone through all of it, from the school nights, back to school nights, and kids getting sick and having to call in work because of it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny, people used to ask my mother, when my mother had the kids, was I in jail or,
oh Lord,
or on drugs? They assumed that, that had to be the case if she had the children, watching the children for me. But we've been blessed to have a different sort of story, and I think it may have started off idealistic because I was raised by my mother. I know for a fact that a woman, it's very difficult to raise a man, and in this society, and my mother did a damn good job. She did what she could. But by the time I was 14, my mother's right hand, and she always had a strong right hand, it didn't matter anymore because I was too strong. And, I let her do her thing, and okay, you done? So
that sounds like
yeah. But, the Bay Area has been home for us since 1990. And I've appreciated all you brothers and sisters being in my life, in my daughter's life, my son's lives. They're doing great things because of this village,
That's right.
Yeah. And I'll leave it at that. Last thing I'll say, like Baba Greg said, there are lessons that we get, and whether we know why we're getting them, we can certainly convey that to other youngsters, right? And I've been blessed to do that from Los Angeles to the Bay Area with hundreds of youngsters. Some of them I had to bury, but many of them I haven't, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you all.
We got about 10 minutes left. Shashem wants to say something, and I was going to ask if Gaylon, if it makes sense to you, that if everybody had one closing, 30 seconds on, here's one thing I'm taking away from this conversation before we turn it back over to Barbara. If that's okay. So Shem, you had something, and then why don't we just do a quick go around, and that'll take us up to about 7:30.
Yeah, I did. I had 2 things, but I'll be very brief with them. The first one is like now I tell all the people I talk to, black people, particularly the black brothers I talk with, I say, we come together, man, don't talk to me about no white people. Don't talk to me about no other colored people. I say, talk to me about black people. I say, they gonna solve their problem. Let them solve their own problem. We got our own problem to solve as black people. We gotta heal ourselves. And it takes a lot of energy and concentration to heal yourself. You just don't do it overnight. So we gotta deal with their problem. I say, look here, when you go to work, get your paycheck, come on home, be black. You know, leave them people alone. And they say, well, what about the white people? I said, look, a lot going on with white people. Some of them are very good, but I do remember in the 60s, a lot of white people demonstrating too, out there protesting. And what happened afterward? They went back to being white, and we started doing what we were doing. And they out there again, so I'm saying, let them go what they're gonna do. I say, we gotta be great again. We have to be great again. We came back up 1 foot. I'm saying, look here, they hit us once, we hit them 7 times. Not just talk. We gotta learn how to do it. You know, we gotta learn how to do everything we're gonna do, because action is what it is now, not just talking. So if I'm saying in terms of religion, I'm saying all religions to go back to the Nile Valley and come back forward. That's how we begin to understand we're on the same page. You know, I hear all these different religions, different times, different areas. I'm saying, okay, I respect it, but the Nile Valley would all begin. That's where we should go back and understand that. And we build up trust by doing things together, not about just talking. I mean, you trust people when you do something together and you know you can trust them to do what they're gonna say they're gonna do. That's how we build up trust. And the brothers ain't been doing too much to develop no trust. We ain't doing very much at all. Not talking, but not very much doing. So I just want to leave with this right here that one of the things that I don't know how we can be free, we can't supply our own food.
Hey, Shashem, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me? What happened?
No, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I'm just saying the last thing is we develop our own food base. We can't be free until we got some food. We ain't got much land.
Is it just me or can you all hear Shashem?
We can hear.
Yeah, we can hear.
We can hear.
Something wrong with your thing, Greg. But y'all hear what I'm saying, right?
I'll share.
Yeah. Yes,
We need our own food. We need our own food. We need our own medicine, if nothing else. And I'm working on a plan. It's way out there, but it's workable. I put it on a few people, and they understand it. But it took a lot more than me, just an idea. But some things do begin in one person. If it's good, other people want it, you know. So I'm just saying that's one of the things that we can develop some trust. Because it's gonna take some food to heal our bodies. Some good food. And we see it right now, we're dying in unnecessary proportions. We're eating the bad food and taking that bad information in, taking that bad food in. And the only way they can change it is leave it out there. Don't talk about the white people, whatever they're doing, just leave it alone. Learn from the inside of what we're gonna do with other brothers, trustworthy brothers. We got some wicked brothers too, but trustworthy brothers. And I'll stop there. Next question. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Brother Hodge, do you have audio again? He can't hear me.
I think he left and he's coming back in, I believe.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that he had indicated is sort of if we can just do a 30-second check out. So folks can share how you feel and what you're taking away.
Oh, he's back in.
You see him? Wait.
Brother Greg? Brother Greg?
Is he still connecting?
For 30 seconds.
Someone else can go ahead and start.
Yes,
I mean,
please.
they can say their piece, and then once he joins back in, we can
keep it rolling. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah.
Okay, for 30 seconds. I'm feeling definitely inspired. I love when our people come together and we speak to one another. We speak truth. I love when we talk about our legacy and our children. And when men speak amongst men, therein lies power. So I'm encouraged to see us doing that, and I'm encouraged to see our sisters with us. With that, I'm complete.
You hear us now, Greg? No?
The sound still went out.
Somebody else care to go?
Mr. Tarkington still on the line?
Yeah, I'm still here. Excuse me for not being on video, but I have like several things going on right now. So I've been listening.
Understand.
I have been listening and gaining just insight. The one thing that I do understand, and it's been confirmed in this program, this setting, but just in everything, the two most sacred positions that has ever existed since the beginning of the time is the position of mother and father. We know that it can a family can strive with only one, but in order to have the dynamic influence that we all need and to have to know who we truly are, we need both mother and fathers. So fatherhood, motherhood is sacred.
Yes.
Because one, through father, this is just my opinion, but through fatherhood, we learn who we are. We learn exactly who we are, who we were meant to be. And through our mothers, it is enforced. And that's the emphasis that we're missing. Right now, we've substituted the mother and father for, as they say, the white man's way of doing things, or the Western civilized world, and that's money. And what I've understood since I'm 47, so it was never about money. It was about our true wealth, which is our community, and our spirituality, which is centered. Our community is based on our spirituality, and as it has been said before, until we get back into that, we will never respect the position of fatherhood, and we will never truly respect the position of motherhood. So that's what I've gotten from this situation, is just a confirmation and something I can apply to my own life to ensure, as has been said, not to just act, not to just talk about it, but how to actually take action, so that at least if we can do one person each, have influence on one person each, that's the beginning of it. All right, I'm complete. Thank you.
I like to say that in my 30 seconds or so, it's like we talk a lot about the first family, black family, the masculine and the feminine. We mentioned Asar, Set, and sometimes Heru, but most of us don't even know about the first family, any details. You know about the afterlife, and it's so religiously, spiritually deep. If you ever go out and examine it, it really is. I'm sure some of you have. But it's so important that we don't even talk about it. We don't talk about why Jesus is so important in people's life, because he's going to receive the people on the other side. That's what's so important. And Osar is the first of that I know of about the other side, but we don't teach that. When people come to us and talk to us, we talk about spirituality. We don't talk about Asar, Aset, and Heru. The basis of some of the Nile Valley's civilization, spirituality. And so I'm saying we should get off into that and bring all the religions together up under that Nile Valley teaching. And we'll be much greater people, because we go back as far as we can, then we start coming forward. And until we do that, we ain't never gonna know who we were. Our greatness, we're gonna talk about it, but we ain't never gonna get to it. Because ain't gonna touch the spirituality in the next world. That's where we gotta get to. This world, we can understand a little bit. The next world, where people want to go, but they don't understand. And Asar, Aset, and Heru teaches us that. As far as we can understand, that's the teaching as far as it goes. So I think we get to that. I know I would be much happier. that I completed the cycle of understanding. So that kind of goes back to where they're saying right now and understanding. When you talk about now Valley civilization, our black people, I understand, talk about this about 4,000 years. If they talk about 4,000 years, we can't talk about it for 4 minutes. There's something wrong with that picture for me. I'll stop there.
All right, I went out for a second on audio, so I don't know how many people had a chance to just close out, and I'll turn it over to Barbara. It's 7:30, a little bit after 7:30. But anybody else want to add any last thing before we turn it back over to our host?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, real quickly, you know, I've taken advantage of these virtual backgrounds. I've been doing a lot of Zoom calls, and it's something that's genius about advertisement, is that once you look at a billboard, you can't unlook.
That's
you
right.
know, and it goes in, and it permeates your mind, and it begins to, you know, move around and all that kind of good stuff. And so, you know, the people behind me right now were no jokes. They wasn't niggas. They wasn't Negroes. They wasn't colored. And, you know, when we look at, you know, 500 years, the past 500 years, and we compare that with thousands of years of our existence, it's kind of like getting a DUI and having to go to jail overnight. And I get out and my woman leaves me and I lose my car. I lose my license. And so it's a temporary setback because I can get me another car. I can get me another woman and I can get my my license back. And so, you know, it's kind of like taking our minds out of the 500 years, as Brother James was saying, and really look at where were we before we got interrupted. And that's what I see is this an opportunity what we're going through right now. It's the door to truth has opened up. And so, you know, some of us are going to go back to sleep and some of us are going to chart a new course from this pandemic and from this whole aspect of having the violence that's been rained down on us continuously. It hasn't stopped, and as somebody said, it's just being filmed now.
Yeah.
But these people behind me wasn't no joke. They weren't no joke, and neither are we.
That's right.
And so how do we take our minds out of the game that's been played? And I'm gonna say this lastly. I really have always taken offense to that word slave. When they refer to us as slaves, you know, they didn't refer to the Jews as slaves. They referred to them as people. But when we allow people to continuously keep referring to us as slaves, we were slaves. That's not a human. It's not human. So, and it's just like the word black. I don't know. I know we ain't got time. I just was saying a few last words. I'm inspired by being in the company of y'all. And, you know, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that we can chart a new course because ain't none of this new. It's just really a matter of us getting our license back and getting our car back and getting our woman back. Thank you. I'm out.
So, Sister Barbara, we'll turn it back over to you. And thank you for the opportunity for us to share a little bit. You know, blessings to everybody's family. Blessings.
Yes.
We're still in a pandemic. Please be safe when you start moving around. Have a mask. And talk to young people because we have a lot of young people who still think this was like a hoax. 120,000 people have died, and it's growing every day. In California, our East Oakland, West Oakland neighborhoods are the numbers are going up. We're more at risk because of our, you know, some of our health conditions. So please, let young people know that this moment is not over. We just need to be a little bit more careful as we get out there. But with that, let me turn it back over to you, Sister Barbara, and thank you again for the opportunity for us to have a conversation.
Wow, you know, this does my heart good. And as Brother Logan said, being optimistic, I'm going to stay that way. I've been that way. And B.H. Brilliant Minds Project Inc. just want to thank you all for tapping into the Tap In series. And this is what we want to do, is bring organic conversations. How do we inspire, encourage, and motivate ourselves, as the brothers have said, and the sisters, about how do we chart our own path? and teach our children the legacy that already has been laid for them, but how do they walk on this particular foundation? And how do they move in society, knowing that the sign that the images that you have behind you, you have a force that's with you. And the force will never go, but you need to learn how to tap into it. So our healing is so essential and it's important. If we do not heal each other, then we're just wasting our time. And this conversation was about healing and wisdom and how do we get back to, as Brother Logan has, the connecting of the village and all the other work that all of you are doing in our communities. If we continue to do this, we're doing our part. And all we can do is step into what we've been chosen to do. And that's all I'm trying to do. I just want to allow what God has given me a platform to help, encourage, and give it to somebody else. It's not about me. It's about us. And how do I continue to do that? That's all I want to do, is be a light, be a tunnel, be a connector to hopefully help us get to where we need to be. And I just want to thank the Akanadi Foundation, So Love Can Win grant. And this is not the first, this is not the last. This is just the beginning of all of what we're going to do together. And I'm so honored and grateful. If you can see me, I'm gonna get on my knees and just say, I say to you all, and I'm so grateful that you are in my life and that you are part of my family and that I can call on you. I trust you. And I know that you have the wisdom to help me go to where I need to be. So I just want to say thank you. And if anybody else want to share, you're more than welcome. Samantha, you have anything to say?
I'm also just grateful by this space. I see another person, Brother Earl Jacobs, also joined us, so I'll give him an opportunity. I think the word that stuck out for me, or the phrase, just being able to surrender my ego and being able to create a space for men to be themselves, but also to mess up and to learn at the same time. And then also to know the value in trusting and keeping the peace too, being inspired by the story of we're not going to watch that. And there wasn't a debate about it. So that there's something about just being able to trust the reasoning, even if you don't understand it in the process. And I'll turn it over to Brother Earl Jacobs before we close out, if you have anything to say. Let me see.
I just want to say I enjoyed the dialogue. Thank you all. Barbara, thank you.
You're welcome.
Greg, Gaylon, Gary, it's good to see you all. Praise the Lord. We're talking about fatherhood, so let me just share this story very quickly. The agency that I work for, we service individuals that are currently on parole. And this young man I had an opportunity to assist, he is homeless, on parole. Girlfriend is 5 months pregnant. They've been living in a tent.
Oh dear.
Through our agency, we could provide him with housing, but we wouldn't be able to provide his fiance with housing as well, just be individuals that are our clients. So I told him, I said, what do you want to do? He said, I'm going to start with my fiance. And I said, I love you for that. I said, because that's what I would be doing. I'd be out here with her. She's pregnant. Your baby is already born. It's in the womb. It's 5 months. There's limbs. There's a head. It's breathing inside of her. So you're a father. So you're handling your business. So I appreciate my brother Kevin Grant, because I was talking to him. I said, look, I'm having problems finding him a place. He got me in contact with someone through the city. And right now, they have a spot now.
Yes.
So I say all that because, you know, this young man who was tempted to do all sorts of things and was frustrated and doors were closing. I said, you got to understand, there's a lot of people out here that have love for you. You just haven't met us yet. So you just can't give up. You can't give up. And I'm just hoping and praying that because of the pandemic, after this is all over, when things become normal, I hope they never become so normal that we're distracted again with all the foolishness that this world offers, that it prevents us from being able to provide the knowledge to others that need it. Because anytime I hear someone say, I'm a self-made whatever, I know they're lying. Because the position that we're in, if it hadn't been for our ancestors, if it hadn't been for our elders in our community, in our families. So we have to be able to continue to provide that support, that wisdom, that love and encouragement that others who just don't think that life is just worth living.
Yeah.
Their environments, they've grown up with hopelessness, with no sense of self, of knowing the greatness that they originate from. So I just have to say, we're still a great people because we're still surviving.
That's right. Ooh.
In spite of it all, we're still a great people.
Yeah.
So we may not have been able to show, and in this moment, continue to show and shine as brightly as we possibly could, but I'm just going to continue to hang on. We will at some point in time. So please let us continue to have this much needed dialogue and not ever lose the hope. And thank you for allowing me to share. Have a blessed day, everyone.
Since we're continuing, I just want to say at my age, I see the shine coming on. Because when I was a young man, 20 years old, I was dropping seeds like older people have dropped upon me. This is a continual process, you know. We've seen something in our lifetime. I've seen a whole lot of things in my lifetime. But we're going to see more because let's not forget, this is the age of Aquarius. And everything's coming to light, you know. We come into our power. And we're the ones going to lead the world to freedom. And we know what freedom means or smells like. We haven't had it yet. But the world follows us. It's like the world's with us right now. We got to get back into ourselves to be ourselves.
And on that note, I want to say thank you all. God bless you. Mother Fania, did you have anything to say?
Everybody said it. I mean, I'm inspired. As some of you know, I'm, back in the saddle with parenting.
Yeah.
I have an 11-year-old, my cousin's daughter. So at times it's like, woo-wee. But you all have given me more inspiration and faith to keep going. Ashe. Thank you.
Ashe. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Peace and blessings.
Okay, good night.
You too. God bless you. All right.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Mama Ted.
You're welcome. Hello.